1, 2. One, two. Okay. Hello, Kerry. I think I might have got it. One, two. Yeah, let's take that down a bit. There we go. About there. Test, test, test. 1, 2. That sounds much better. Fantastic. And let's just mute that type, so I don't have to listen to myself again. Fantastic. Yes, I think the XLR on my lead on my microphone needs a little bit of deoxit or something like that. But there you go. Alright, okay, welcome to the stream again, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for the technical issues. You know how it is, these things happen. So we are back, and apparently everything is working a lot better now, so we will carry on. So just start giving us thumbs up when you're ready with the first film, and we will get cracking with that. Obviously, feel free to chat about anything as we go along. I don't know this film. I'll be watching it along with you for the first time. So it looks like it could be fun. And we did have a good surprise fun one last time, so why the hell not? Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Need to stop that. There we go. Brilliant. Yeah, so start giving us thumbs up when you're ready, and we'll get started on that. It always kind of throws me out there. Kerry's very, very ready. Awesome. Like I say, we will be starting with text. It should be the first one in the description. And we'll get cracking on that. Yeah, that's working great. Oh, blimey. Oh, in the meantime, I managed to pick myself some of this stuff up, right? I've had it before. I love this stuff. It's really, 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 really tasty. But my God, it's the sort of thing that will absolutely kick your ass, or about 3 days after. It's extremely tasty, this stuff. It's also extremely hot. If Matt Zion was in the audience right now from Reckless Eating, he tried some of that stuff. He tried a whole teaspoon of that stuff, scooped it and threw it in there and went, oh, it's not so bad. I don't know what he's talking about. It's not that bad. And it starts kicking in because it's got a slow build up, that stuff. Fucking evil. It's called pure pain paste for a very good reason. I liken the effect of eating that as is to kind of like putting your lips on a hot exhaust. It's pretty cruel. Oh, did we restart the stream? Yes, we had to, just to correct the sound. We should be good to go now. It's apparently it seems to be sounding quite nice now. Although that's interesting that the XLR seems to be kind of pissing around. Okay, folks, then we will get started with the film. So get yourself onto text, and we will start on the count of 5 and go on going. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Apparently it's uploaded for horroraddicts.com. Not as good as realmofhorror.com. I'm getting that vibe from which was the film? Death Machines. Getting a slight Death Machines vibe from that title card. Toilet roll in the fridge strength, pretty much. In fact, probably a little bit more. Thing is, it burns. It's what I call a double end burn. So you are pretty much incapacitated for 10 to 15 minutes after eating this stuff raw. And then it's the next day and a half after that, when you wake up the next morning. And it's just... it's not good. But if you mix it with stuff, I do that in like taco meat and stuff like that, and it's really, really, really good stuff. But if you're in Britain, it's chiliseeds.co.uk. You get it from if you like spicy food, and like I say, mix it in with stuff. Mix it into sauces and stuff like that. Or if you do like a chili or something like that, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon max in a big portion. Great. I love spicy. Barry Lynch, David Lynch's lesser known brother. I don't know if that's true. Nope. Hamster powered manufacturer. Anyone getting Mangler vibes? I mean, this is a straight-to-video film. It looks pretty good. I think, it's probably benefiting from slightly lower resolution, but... that's some shitty-looking beer right there. Did you hear about the guy that on a dare ate an entire tin of curry powder and ended up in hospital? He was in deep coma. Oh my god. You run sod. That's definitely a dad joke, but fair play to you. Fair play to you. There's lots of weird secretions in this film so far. It's a little disturbing. One film I do want to watch online with you guys at some point will be do a double bill of Jeff Lieberman stuff. I would love to do Squirm and Blue Sunshine, but I suspect it will be a bring your own media kind of thing. But that would be kind of fun to do. I'm almost tempted to see if I can get Jeff Lieberman to actually turn up for it. That'd be very exciting. Seth Green always looks fed up. Oh, good. I might have to make chat malfunction on screen if it's going to degenerate into like wall-to-wall dad jokes, but no, I wouldn't do that. Squirm would be awesome. I love Squirm. You haven't seen Blue Sunshine. Blue Sunshine's really, really good. It's a very smart film. Very interesting film. Very political as well. It's the one when I did the review of it, Jeff Lieberman saw it and was very, very complimentary of my review of it. Does anyone think that Seth Green is a vampire? Oh, he's aged a bit, but he hasn't changed much, has he? I think it's the first one obviously where he's a lot quieter than he would normally be in the films. He's a hard ass, isn't he? It's Carlton. It is as well, isn't it? Oh my god, yeah. Should have done that in John Travolta voice, Oh my god. Definitely has a 90s vibe to it, doesn't it, this? You know it's going to be the badass with the heart of gold, don't you? It's funny seeing him try to do the tough guy, isn't it? Yes, I forgot to mention that, Simon. That is quite right. He is indeed the director of Hellraiser 2. Alfonso Rivera playing the antithesis of Carlton, i.e., the Sour Prince. You get a feeling there's going to be a little bit of whimsy in this with that soundtrack. Miss the innocent days of the 90s. I've never really thought of the 90s like that, but then, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, particularly. 90s is when I was like, kind of like, by that point I was going out to the pubs and all that kind of stuff, so. But obviously, 70s and the 80s had a lot of cynicism, particularly the 70s. But you look at the world today, it's a lot harder to keep a stiff upper lip, as they say. It's Rosalind Allen, the lead from Children of the Corn 2. Just kidding, I won't be doing this all night. You do it as much as you like, John. It was great having John on the other week. He also directed one of the later Amityville sequels and Power Rangers in Space, bit of a down. It's a shame, isn't it? Because, you get perfectly good directors and, yeah. But, as long as the guy was working. Hard to believe that I was very, very, very gawky and geeky and entirely skinny and usually the target of a lot of bullying when I was a kid. It's funny. Some people sort of think I'm kind of scary in real life. It's funny how things change, isn't it? Amityville Man, I watched the first film recently and it sucked ass. It's not what people expect it to be. It's a perfectly decent film, but it's based on a somewhat dodgy story. Ron's younger brother, yes. particularly flammable, these sticks, apparently. It's a little bit of foreshadowing, perchance. Randall mostly works as an editor, does the odd directing jobs as and when, so he's pretty active in film behind the scenes. That's good. I like it when people can make a decent living out of this, So, and that often, involves people doing a lot of side jobs and different roles and that kind of stuff. And it's one of the things with all the young actors I end up working with. And you see somebody so keen to get just into acting and only acting. So you learn a bit of stage management, that kind of stuff, because it's an extra way to make some money. You get 2 or 3 maybe, but those guys will be able to make a living. It's not easy making money as an actor at the best of times, or even as a director or anything. His Amityville was the 3D one, if I remember, with Meg Ryan. A big fan of the series myself, but fair enough. It got incredibly cheesy, and then a lot of the later sequels in particular had nothing to do with anything really. It was the whole kind of it's like the Hellraiser franchise, which kind of went on and just they had a completely unrelated story, and then at the end they'd throw Pinhead into sort of just to kind of deliver justice at the end. So not only did you just have this crowbar thing in, it's also like in Deus Ex Demon thing. I've got to watch some of the later ones again. Some of them are good stories, good enough stories from what I remember. It's just they not really, weren't really Hellraiser. And funny enough, I just watched the remake Hellraiser last night. Some really, really good stuff. There's some stuff which is not quite so interesting to me on that, but on the whole, actually pretty worthwhile remake. And I love the Cenobites in it. They're really, really good. Just checking the Black Guy's credits. Seems he was the friend. Yes, here. Alfonso Ribeiro, if I'm not mistaken. Now seems to be a TV host. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't... It's not how you imagine Carlton, is he? Fun fact, the murdered family in the Amityville house, the DeFeos, their name translates along the line of Muck Ugly. Yeah, Cenobites in the new Hellraiser were decent. Yeah, it's a really nice job. I think even Doug Bradley was very impressed with the new Pinhead and stuff like that. So apparently they offered him a cameo in the film. He turned it down because he was like, he just wanted to be remembered on Hellraiser for his Pinhead. And that can be a weird thing, I guess, when you've made a character your own and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there was a lot of complaints about the new Pinhead and all that kind of stuff. People didn't want to let go of the Doug Bradley end of it, but as many people have pointed out, it's actually probably a more true to the original story kind of portrayal. Her whole story could be explained as, or maybe she was just mentally ill. Oh, power source has run out. See, I've got the subtitles on this, the auto-generated ones, and it blanks out the obscenities, even bitch. God, YouTube's getting such a child about this stuff. Amityville 2 was meant to be a prequel, except the family's name changes from Defoe to Montelli. I don't remember too much of most of them. Oh, ouchie. Probably shouldn't have had that lying around. He's selling the pain, though. They hadn't planned this to be a 3D movie at any point, had they? Because that was straight out of Parasite, that shot, wasn't it? This is this is the even more redneck version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre shot, isn't it? That dolly shot by the tire. Wasn't the entity also based on a dubious case? Yes, I mean most of those are. I mean they're supernatural things. So even if you're into that kind of stuff, the evidence, if you're honest, is interpretive to say the least. It's a tick hugger. Thought the new Hellraiser was unimpressive. Owed virtually nothing to Barker's novel and just looked at like a cheap generic direct DVD horror. I wouldn't say it looked like it looked bad. Certainly didn't, in my opinion, anyway. Did it owe virtually nothing to Barker's original novel? No, but even there was a lot of changes even in the original Hellraiser movie compared to the Hellbound Heart. But yeah, I mean, it is very different. They could almost have just done it as another sequel, to be honest with you, just to some degree. But partly, Doug Bradley can't play Pinhead forever. At the end of the day, so I've got no problem with them changing certain things. It's a bit gooey, isn't it? Nice. Memory serves me correctly, Demiani wanted to include several really nasty scenes in Amityville 2. The screens went badly. That doesn't surprise me. Especially when you get a successful film, and then the films after that tend to, as it sort of extends as a franchise, and I think they immediately saw Amityville as being a potential franchise. At that point, they sort of want to commercialise it and make it more palatable, as much as anything. You need some big tweezers to twist that head out. It is a bit potato vision, this particular. Let's just check the settings. Why is it so low? Oh no, that's as high as it goes. That's fair enough. It's a bit potato vision, this version, but there you go. That looks alright. Just think Doug Bradley just wanted to play the removals man. Just think Doug Bradley just wanted to play the removals man just to get his face on the camera. Yes. You got more screen time but less face time. Can you ask a serious question? I'm sure you can. Playing with the radio. I can't get MTV on this thing. Yeah, there was a lot more stuff filmed in Amityville too, but forced to cut a lot out due to poor test screenings and the MPA insisting on cuts. Yes, I'm not quite sure what a test audience would be expecting from something like Amityville. And it always amazes me, to some degree, I don't know why they screen test horror films, because it's always much more of a minority kind of niche type thing. So it seems a bit silly. See, wouldn't you be a bit more concerned about all these kind of pulsating blobs knocking around? I mean, seriously. How can you seriously make a franchise out of the Amityville series? I mean, it's about a family terrorised by house spirits or whatever you want to call them. It's at most a 2-film series, not what we got. They saw money, that's all. They saw dollar signs and just kind of went for it. Same true with, although they didn't go quite as far off, of course, with Friday the 13th and Halloween. But certainly, I think the closest analogy would be the Hellraiser series. Films like that where they get further and further off track as they go along. I dubbed the Scuttlebug. Hellraiser's at about 10 or 11 movies now, whereas Amityville is around 20, yes. Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, I mean, particularly, it seems to be with like paranormal movies, they seem to just reuse the title, and it's almost like a Tales of the Unexpected series type thing. Where you can have these kind of completely separate stories, and they're just linking together with that name. I guess like the whole kind of Cloverfield thing. They went, the first film did so well. We absolutely unrelated movies that are in the Cloverfield universe, as they call it, and it's just fucking ridiculous, really. But there you go. Fun info for the plays Barker wrote in the 70s. He gives the least helpful stage direction, such as, say this line like the north wind is howling through your eyes. Pretty sure Dawn of the Dead has less unofficial sequels than Amityville. Well, there's various. It's about 3 different Day of the Deads, isn't there? It's the official one and at least 2 unofficial ones. Of course, Dawn, you've got all the kind of Italian knockoffs. What an eccentric character. Wow. Shooting the scenery around there like a bloody beaver, isn't he? It's never the same story. Amityville ends after 3, really. After that, they just use the name as a selling point, yes. Found footage Amityville was so bad. I imagine it is. I mean, found footage, they completely really just lost all uh, the point of using it. It became just a way of cheaply making movies. Which wouldn't be bad, necessarily, but um, it just seemed to be a way to circumvent any kind of artistic input. Come on, Cooper Smith, what you doing? That's grim. I think they couldn't copyright the name Amityville, could they? Because isn't Amityville an actual place? Hmm. Yeah, Amityville, village on Long Island, New York. There's probably a few others as well. Hmm. Yeah, it's the name of the town where the real house is. Okay. So yeah, that'd be like kind of like saying you can't use the word New York um, in a film. It's a good loophole if you want to avoid a copyright headache. Yes. I don't think Amityville Scarecrow is part of the official series, though. Oh god, doesn't knock us include an Amityville vibrator. Crikey. Amityville in space. I've seen some Drek, in my time. Oh my god. So if a low budget horror film being made just out of Amityville, yeah, you can pretty much do that from what I can tell. It's not the first time though. There's plenty of series that have been. Um, it's like Exorcist. You can't um, you can't really copyright the word exorcist. So you can put like kind of demon exorcist or all those kind of different combinations and tie it in with a classic series. Look out! It's a blob. You get to see the sensitive side of the tough guy here. Several of these Amityville knockoffs are written, directed by YouTuber Sean Phillips, aka Cool Dude. Really? Oh God. Fair play. Uh, you know what? I'm very reluctant to say that now. Some people shouldn't make movies. Well, there's a few I could probably say that about, but as long as he paid his actors and writers and crew and made a little bit of cash out of it, then what the hell? Apparently, the Italian Alien 2 avoided a lawsuit because the director pointed to a previous work written before Scott's film. That was a good film, though. I say good, it's bad, but it was fun. Alien Contamination, I've always known as. But I've always kind of like say not Ridley Scott, James Cameron probably saw that because the Queen in Alien Contamination is very similar to the one in his film. But we watched that one film of his, which was actually pretty decent. And again, I don't have a problem with people making shitty films necessarily. Sometimes they do it deliberately, sometimes it's incidentally. But I'm happy enough for people just to be indulging in filmmaking in general, as long as everybody involved is compensated suitably and looked after. Dog burger. Poor old Batzella. I would be interested to kind of like, because you talk about him a lot more than I ever have, really. I'd be interested to see a bunch more of his films to see kind of where his really good stuff is, where his really bad stuff is. Because, like I said, the one we watched was rather good, and I've seen the bad ones as well, obviously. If Uwe Boll could have a career thanks to a tax loophole, why not anyone else? As audience members, you have the choice of not watching the stuff, and Uwe Boll is a very controversial figure, to say the least. But part of you kind of wonders how much of that is just him being a showman, and how much of it is genuine arrogance. And I can't say I've seen much of his stuff that I like, but what's it? Attack on Wall Street or whatever it was. It had some interesting ideas in it. It wasn't as good as Josh Hadley seemed to think it was, in my opinion, but certainly a lot more earnest in many respects. I think all of us would agree that sometimes a bad movie is so much more fun than a critically acclaimed one. Oh yeah. Love interest. If it both should be banned from going anywhere near a movie camera. And yes, there is always some pleasure to be derived from a bad movie. I mean, for me, a movie's only really, really, truly bad when it's obviously so neglected in kind of like any artistic sort of sense, and or it's devoid of any tongue in cheek. It's not fun. It's just designed to sucker people in with the minimum amount of effort, which is why a lot of the found footage sort of stuff and a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about tonight, I tend to find that stuff a lot more distasteful than even a film like Silo, which you watch a film like Silo, it's not easy. It's not an easy film. It's not a fun film, but it is a good film. Tell you what, the Blood Island films are definite guilty pleasures. Being honest, and I've said this before, Threads is the only film that truly scares me. Yes, it's disturbing, rather than, I think, more than scary for me. It's very viscerally unsettling. It wouldn't appear within 24 hours either, would it? Sharknado films. Yeah, I don't find the Sharknado films particularly interesting. Some people really like them, but that sort of asylum stuff strikes me as much more cynical than it is fun. But some people would disagree. Some people really find it entertaining enough. Threads the day after When the Wind Blows War Game, most disturbing and depressing films I've ever watched. I think I might want to give up on the syringe when it's starting to vibrate, shake, and pulsate. Ticks. Just going to review them on my YouTube channel as part of post-apocalyptic series. Got so depressed I tried to sit from had to give up. No, I totally feel that. When I did the review for Threads myself, it was not an easy thing, to say the least. Yeah, I got. I want to get the upgrade the copy of Threads I got, but I got Culloden and the War Game, really good. War Games was very, very, very controversial when it aired first time. Pretty much got banned straight off. Took years for them to get round to it, for the public to get to see it again. There were special screenings, and that was about it. Oh, it looks ticked off. I didn't think you could squish the ticks. Thought you had to flame them. Are we going to get Sigourney Weaver at the end of this coming along with a fucking great big flamethrower? Thread's the most light-hearted romp since Come and See. That's what you picked up, yeah. Yeah, I've got a pretty lo-fi version of it. I mean, not that that really makes that much of a difference, but there is a better version out nowadays. Oh, boom. These things are sounding cooler by the minute. I'm going to sit around and smoke ticks from now on. Thought she was going to taste that for a second. I have to give them some props. They sort of like, I mean, it's just the right side of the comedy slash horrific edge with the special effects in this. They've not tripped up on that. I was actually kind of, like Simon was planning. At one point, I was looking at doing an entire series um, of depictions on nuclear and atomic matters, going right back to the kind of like the 30s, 40s sort of. Well, from about the 40s, with kind of like the sort of radiation scares and all that kind of stuff, and then into the Cold War, and then like the day after, threads, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it'd be quite an interesting thing to do, but huge amount of work. A huge amount of work. Sort of thing I would do if I didn't have to go to work every day. I'm a little bit more immune than most people to the kind of more miserable end of these things, though. But there are, like Salo, the War Game, Threads. Not so much the day after, but to a certain extent that. Very difficult film to sit through, but when you sat through some incredibly depressing stuff, like some of the stuff I've covered in Extremis. Yeah, I'm more or less immune to that kind of end of it. I have a way of being able to detach myself from it somewhat. Threads is a very, very difficult one, even for me. These guys are going to need some serious antibiotics for their spice, yes. It's not just Lyme disease, it's full-on lemon and Lyme disease. So K and B lads were on the SFX crew. Oh, really? Okay. Brian says, where are we on the film? Well, Brian, we are currently at 46 minutes and 10 seconds. Nope. Irritating teens of the movie. Right back. Oh, excuse me. Absolutely, just throw dynamite in there and then scoop whatever you want off the top. Now I want to see the guy from Squirm with the worms in his face, sort of like come out from the reeds or something like that. Day After is so much brighter than the war game. Yes, it is a bit. I don't dismiss it because of that, but I do get. Look, I've had Americans in the past sort of say, "Oh, no, not just Americans actually, but mostly." So say, "Oh no, I mean, but the Day After is so much more." Well, at least it's depressing, and they go, "It really isn't." And it is the ending gives you a little bit of hope, and it gives you a little bit of kind of softer, touchy feely kind of thing. I mean, the ending of Threads is so astonishingly bleak that the compared to the Day After. What did I say? Well, it's the Day After ends with a hug, where Threads ends with the barely suppressed scream of a mother with a dead child in her arms. It's like, oh boy. Not seen you for ages. How you doing? I'm doing fine. Work starts kicking in again as of Monday. New boss, new colleague. We will see how it all goes. New students. And my aim this year, over this next academic year, will be to get involved with some of the other departments a bit. Trying to be a bit more positive about certain things. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention. I can't really go into it too much. I've been called up for jury service. Me. They want me to judge people. Yeah, it's definitely tamer than Fred's. It's got its moments. And I think compared to how it was presented to, in particular, the American audience, the subject matter in The Day After and the depiction was astonishing. And it made a real difference as well. Between that and Threads, the changes it made in the world were incredible. Oh, Clint Howard. He's actually a bloody good actor sometimes. Oh, nice. Well, that was grim. I'll give this movie props. It's going full out with the as far as it can go with all the horror kind of aspects of it. I mean, it's goofy and it's campy, but the gore end of it, it's definitely trying. I'll give it 10 out of 10 for effort. Absolutely. Oh, Carlton's tripping. I tell you what, I mean, as there are moments in this film where you do at least get some kind of feel for some cinematography going on, some actual kind of ambitious and thoughtful cinematography. It's not half-arse in it. Every young black male has to carry a switchblade, apparently. I think Carl Sagan was quite heavily involved with the discussion of nuclear warfare, and the day after was a big part of the. I think it was like Congress discussions they had on the subject matter. In that regard, the day after is an incredibly important film, because the War Game did it years and years before. But it made a huge difference, as did Threads over here. I do remember watching Threads the first time. It was when it aired. Actually watched it live on. Well, I say live. Watch it on broadcast. Rented this on VHS when it came out. Did you? Okay. I've not seen it before. I'm actually kind of liking it. So. Good suggestion, Kerry. Because we've got Dust Devil to come up in a little while as well. Dust Devil's a very, very different film. Poor old guy. He's been a bit battered, hasn't he? It's not what you want to see when you're basically tripping, is it? Like a kind of pulsating, deformed Clint Howard. There's a 4K text coming out at the end of the month. Oh, cool. For a straight to video, I mean, I imagine they probably made it with the intent on giving it a theatrical release, but probably just didn't make it. But it certainly doesn't seem as half-assed. So it's always a little tough to tell with it being in kind of potato vision like this version is. But the second film we're watching tonight is one that really does. It's so hard to get hold of. It's amazing that there's even a copy on YouTube, to be honest with you, at all. But that would be nice to see a decent Blu-ray of. Don't think Uncle Phil will rescue. They do a Pied Piper thing and do the Carlton dance and lead them all away. There's a face only a mum could love. Oh, come on. You can't let stuff like this ruin your holiday now, can you? That's just quitting. Quitters never win. It's Todd Slaughter 8 film box set coming out on Blu-ray for £60. Just checking it out. Ah, that could be interesting. It's not too bad a price, considering there's 8 films in there. That was squishy. On a nuclear apocalypse front, Testament is a particularly chilling movie, really intense, worth a watch in same vein as Threads. Testament. Don't think I've ever heard that one. Just in case I need a little bit of depressing. But it ain't cheap. Interesting. Mind you, it's apparently on Prime. Yeah, it's on Prime. I might grab it on Prime. There we go. A little bit of an eccentric character, isn't he? There's a Pete Walker film Blu-ray coming out, but it's 80 quid. Jesus Christ. Oh, there we go. Payoff. He's really having a hard time of it, isn't he? Just about battered him in about 60 different ways. Where are you? I give him his props. He's really going for it, isn't he? He's not half-arsing his role. Good for him. Still curious to get the Andy Milligan box set at some point. And there's a director that's hard to love. So your average first aid kit will just have a few plasters and stuff in it. Not really bullet wound trauma type level of care. So evil. The Pete Walker one does look rather good, actually. But yes, it's 80 quid. I don't really know the films. I've heard sort of vaguely of a couple of them. Want to pick up the Werner Herzog box set. Should be good. Bit of a maniac, isn't he? But kind of cool. Tell you what, the day there's a Batzella box set, I'll probably abandon physical media. I would ask you if you've seen much Andy Milligan stuff there, Kieran. There is something about Andy Milligan. His films are ostensibly not that lovable, to say the least. But there is something about his films. There's a strange quality to them. Certainly arrived at the Evil Dead cabin, haven't we? Got the Black Emmanuel set. Oh, that's kind of cool. Don't bother to go to see the new Indiana Jones film. All the bad reviews turn me off of it. I don't see much point in going to see it myself either, to be honest with you. I only saw Blood Rights, but even after I felt like it had more love, though probably not care put into it than most of Batsy's work. I think certainly with a lot of the European directors, when it comes to those really kind of like low end Z grade movies, Andy Milligan was a guy that really kind of did it because he wasn't really making that much money out of it, if anything, to be honest with you. I think he wanted to have a well-paying career. Who doesn't? But there was always a kind of feel with his films for me that he was making films because he really wanted to make films and tell stories. It was a bit of a nightmare to work with, apparently. He wasn't exactly the easiest guy to get on with. But he had a vision, no matter how misdirected that may have been. Batzella's work is the same with a lot of the Italian, Euro exploitation directors. Spent a lot of time doing stuff because it was meal ticket stuff, and that would be Jean Rollin, Jess Franco, pretty much any Euro exploitation director you can imagine made a lot of movies that were just for cash, produced by people who were kind of in it just to make a quick buck for as cheap as possible. There's another box set with all Pete Walker's early tits and ass films. Funny enough, it is actually quite an interesting part of cinema in general, is that sort of adult cinema sort of thing. When you look at the history of it and how the industry sort of built up and what was permitted and what wasn't, and the reaction from establishment about those things is quite a fascinating discussion. That's better. There's little flourishes in this film, just like I say, little flourishes with the kind of cinematography, the angles they choose, and stuff like that. It's not a film that's made without a vision or without ambition. I mean, it's almost a Sam Raimi kind of feel to it, parts of this. Herschel Gordon Lewis's films, yeah, I think even the bad stuff you can have a bit of fun with, can't you? But he made some classic stuff as well. Blood Feast is no masterpiece by any means, but it's a lot of fun. 2000 Maniacs is actually a pretty decent film. Oh. Got the Norman J. Warren box set. Oh, that's kind of cool. Norman J. Warren is an interesting director. Made some films that really did make an impact in a cultural kind of sense for horror film fans, anyway. Blood Feast isn't even technically the first splatter movie. I think that goes to Jigoku. Yeah, but I'll be talking kind of American splatter. Oh, you can trace these things back with horror and all that kind of stuff. Back. It's just sort of when you go, when did it sort of capture the public imagination? And obviously got a bit of a Western centric point of view. But there you go. Oh wow, okay. That's grim. Just looked up. Milligan was indeed an unpleasant person, seen to have a mental disorder of some sort that was untreated, quite possibly. He wasn't a very nice person to work with, but he was an interesting director. I did see what was one of his first films called Vapors, which was sort of set in a bathhouse. It's a very gay-centric film. Interesting, though. Go to the popcorn film conversation Sunday at Sheffield. Hoping to pick up some goodies. Oh, that sounds like fun. I have to say, I am giving this film a massive amount of credit for the special effects and stuff in it. I mean, bravo, guys. They're like mini land sharks, aren't they? The bugs are everywhere. It's like, no shit. Really? Oh, thanks for telling me, guys. I hadn't noticed. They're a little flammable, aren't they, these ticks? Oh, that's going to make the trip pleasant, isn't it? See, they missed a trick. They could have done a little bit of a Night of the Living Dead homage there, couldn't they? Of set light to the sofa and kick it out the door. Kind of repeating myself, but yeah, my God, there is some Toby Hooper and Sam Raimi influences gone into this movie. Well, just saw one of the main characters in Blood Rights ended up in stuff like Mean Streets, one of the main baddies in Murphy's Law with Charles Bronson. One of the things um, about his cast, really, um, was kind of, let's have a look. It always had a vibe of being like local amdrams and all that kind of stuff, and I think that was very much true. Um, Lots of theatre groups were local that were involved in his films, and I think he was probably involved with what they did on stage and all that kind of stuff. At least that's the vibe I got. So yeah, a bunch of them sort of got a start in that and then kind of moved on and actually took careers, while others just went back to their regular lives, I guess. Milligan was interesting. A lot more interesting than some of his films would imply. But I think that's probably true with Ed Wood and the likes as well. Oh no. Are you going to lose your deposit on your holiday home? You just imagine what the TripAdvisor rating is going to be for this place. There was that awful infestation followed by an unexplainable fire. I charge for appearing in people's dreams. I've got to look into doing another movie night at my theatre at some point. Um, it's kind of fun, just me and a bunch of mates, just screen horror films, one or two horror films on a big cinema-sized screen. It's kind of fun. Oh no. It's too splatty. Well, that was quite good fun. I have to say that was actually quite good fun. I wasn't holding up too much hope for it. I saw little bits and pieces. It was like, oh, it's not going to be too bad, I guess. But that was good fun. Some decently performed characters, a little bit of tragedy, character arcs, minor ones, but they were there. Yeah, that was very well known. That was a pretty decent film. I enjoyed that, so thank you, Kerry. Oh dear, oh dear. Don't you need to get the rights to show the movie at a cinema, even if it's amongst friends? Yeah, well, if it's amongst friends, not really. I mean, if it was like 100 people, yeah, it'd be one thing. But it's just literally kind of like being in a living room. It just happens to be a theatre. Nobody's getting charged for it. Just there to watch a movie. I don't think there's really much need for that. It's not a commercial activity, put it that way. But there you go. I would love to do kind of like a public sort of screenings and talks and stuff like that, and the films, but getting the rights for it and stuff like that is kind of, it's pricey and it's tricky. Plus, I think if I was going to charge, I'd need to get that upgrade. New screen, new projector in the theatre. Make it worthwhile. People spending money on it, that kind of thing. Okay, well, so that one's done now. So if you guys want to, we'll get started pretty quickly on the second one, which will be Dust Devil. Link is in. Oh, his link is not in the description anymore. I don't think, is it? So what we'll do, I will put the description, the link into the chat. Right here. I'll give you a chance there. There you go. Fantastic. How do you actually get the rights to screen a movie like retrospective or on older ones? Could be important for me to know in the future. There's various people that you can go to. It's a bit hard to sort of like be specific. When you like with theatre shows and stuff like that, musicals, things like that, there's generally there's about 3 or 4 companies that you sort of go to obtain rights. Now you can go directly to the distributors, the original distributors, if you want, or you can sort of reach out to various other things. Probably the best way to figure out how to do that kind of stuff would be to perhaps talk to your local cinema. Might be a good way to do that. May be able to put you in the right direction for figuring out how to do a screening. And there may be certain exemptions and certain things that are kind of make it so you can screen. It's like if you're in an educational establishment, it's part of a lesson, that kind of thing. You're not necessarily going to have to pay. If you make it a commercial event, then you have to pay rights and stuff like that. But there you go. Right. Okay, folks, I think what we'll do, let's get everybody kind of hooked up with the second film. Like I say, link's right there. So get hooked up onto that and we'll start having a watch of the second movie. I'll get on with that. It's quite a long one, this one, so it's 1 hour and 48 minutes. So can't wait too long because it's nearly 2 hours long. It's about 9:30 at the moment, so to start giving us a thumbs up. Yeah, it's kind of interesting when it comes to sort of doing all that kind of screening stuff. One thing you could sort of ask about is, ask at local festivals. There'll be people who do local film festivals and stuff would be able to give you some kind of advice on how to do that sort of stuff. Because, apart from anything else, it depends what country you're in and who holds the rights and that kind of stuff. But there's companies that will do rights management. It's like with music in theatre and stuff and public places, this thing called PRS, and you contact them and you kind of make a kind of you arrange with them of how you're actually going to sort of cover the costs of what you're using. It depends on what the use is and all that kind of stuff. And I don't quite know what the film version of that is, but there'll be some companies or some societies that will be able to do that kind of thing, depending on where you're at, really. So Kerry's ready. I'm going to assume everybody else is more or less good to go, and we will get started with Dust Devil, Richard Stanley's movie. I'll give you a heads up before we start. This does have burned in subtitles, but we have to live with that because it's a rare film and it's very hard to find any copies of it, and just try getting it on DVD or Blu-ray. It's quite difficult. Okay, so stand by, folks. We're going to get started in on the count of 5, and we will go on go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So this was, I think, made in cooperation with Film 4, which I don't think exists anymore. I think that collapsed eventually because they just went, it's costing too much to do, we're not making enough money. Film 4 were actually a really interesting production company. Some of the stuff that they did was incredible. Oh, and they made some shit as well, but for a British kind of TV company to support this kind of filmmaking in this way, did a lot. Now get used to this very kind of hyper-saturated sort of feel to the film. There's a good film on YouTube, The Night Sitter 2018. Okay. Yes, I did hear about that, Simon. And it's annoying that, we can't get hold of the fucking film because of... I don't know what came of that. Whether that sort of fell through or... I think it was like literally a few weeks off of being released as well, wasn't it? Or something like that. It was very, very close. It's going to be a quite nice version, and then, yeah. It has a real vibe, doesn't it? I mean, Richard Stanley's films in general have this kind of... oh, God, there you go. Weinstein's. You can't watch that now, can you? And just, like, and not think... but there's a comic book vibe to this kind of thing, to this film. Paul Stanley's films have that kind of exaggerated sort of visual feel. It's very heavily filtered. You've got these tints going on. It all feels very comic book. I don't think that's the intention. Arrow were going to do a hardware special edition, but it got pulled. Oh, it was rather than this, was it? See, I thought it was Dust Devil, but yeah, I might be wrong. I'm just going to make a note of that. I've made a list of films to watch along. I'm making a list. So, yes, 7, yeah. Like I say, just one of those things you can't see that name anymore, can you? And not immediately think that. Okay. It has a real post-apocalyptic vibe to it, doesn't it? And crossed with a kind of cowboy, man with no name sort of thing going on, or Once Upon a Time in America. But I find with this kind of like South African horror things, it has astonishingly kind of like close to like the some of the Aussie horror stuff as well. And it's partly the landscape, I think, those vast deserts, just this sort of feeling of murderous heat. And as much as I love Australia, there's parts of Australia you can imagine absolutely would, just being with the isolation and the heat and the danger and the vastness of the wilderness. You can imagine it would. You'd be very, very close to madness, wouldn't you? These landscapes are kind of like that. Oh yeah. Once Upon a Time in America. Funny you mention it. Sort of maybe a week ago. It is a very good movie. It's a quite outstanding movie. Hmm. Not quite sure what you're supposed to say about that. And sex and death and all, but you have to see if we can track down a. I guess you can at best get it on DVD. This probably at best second hand. Um, yeah, I would love to see a proper Blu-ray treatment of this film. Richard Stanley's career has definitely been a kind of wild one, to say the least. The guy's definitely got some stories along the way. But everything about this film just feels very... it's like the shot with the sun. It's got that Texas Chainsaw kind of feel of just how oppressively hot everything is. You just almost kind of feel grimy just watching the film. And it is one of those things. So like a night like tonight, where it's it's about 30 degrees in here, which is not super hot by some people's standard. It's very hot for me, and feeling that kind of heat while you're watching a film like this is a strange textural kind of addition to the movie. Perfect movie for the current weather. Yeah. Well, next time if we do one and it's this hot, we're probably going to be watching Texas Chainsaw again. Nice. The burning sounds more appropriate for the current weather. See, I know not all of you guys are in like the UK or anything, but we've had very unusual weather this summer. It's not been terribly hot or anything like that particularly, but it's been a lot of cloudy skies and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of rain, which considering how certain parts of the world are suffering at the moment, is I think we've got the good end of it, to say the least. And as much as annoying as it is, because I like to get out there on my days off and, as you know, do the astrophotography and all that kind of stuff. And that's pretty much been a washout this entire summer. I've had probably about 4 nights of decent weather. It's been very difficult. Got to get a blue ripper of this. My friend put on my memory stick. Put on my memory stick years ago from a torrent site. Was there ever a Blu-ray of this? I'd imagine there was a DVD, but I didn't think it was a Blu-ray. I could be wrong. Simon's probably the best one for that. He's more likely to know than I would. Oh, just look at that landscape. And of course, all practical, so they must have built the house and all that kind of stuff to burn it down. So real love goes into this guy's films. I mean, the other stuff aside. And I don't know how true those allegations were. I don't think there was ever any conviction. Sometimes things can be hard to prove. Sometimes they're fake. You never know. All that stuff aside, beautiful filmmaker. I was at that having that conversation with Josh about Richard Stanley's stuff, and this is before all that kind of crap came down. I was talking about hardware. It, apparently, Richard Stanley really loved my comment on it. It's always weird when you kind of like go, I said this thing, and this, and the director or the actor or whoever found out about it. I've got to see whether or not it's like Straw Wiseman seemed very kind of keen on doing another watch along of one of his movies. So I might have to see if I can drop him a line and see which ones he would like to do. Could be kind of cool. Straw was lovely when we did Fight for Your Life. Not sure of the quality. Oh, what, of the Blu-ray? Is a Blu-ray of Dust Devil released by Cook Media of Germany? Okay. I mean, to be honest, at the moment, any release that is at least moderately good is going to be worth having. Dust Devil. Okay. Okay, I might treat myself to that at the end of the month. That may well be worth getting hold of, as it's like that. It's what's available at this point. It has to be said that Richard Stanley really does kind of put a lot of effort into the, with his team, puts a lot of effort into the sets and stuff like that. Just little moments of the crime scene shots as well. Put in there as a really quite, there's an edge to this film. That's the thing. I think that this film is so heavily reliant on the atmosphere that it generates. And this is from even shots like this with the mirage of the car coming over the hill, the filters that they use, the absolute just oppressive nature of such of this kind of landscape. It is always amazing when, you know, I mean, not only with the kind of like the stuff that they've made for the film, but the use of the landscape in a film can really kind of make or break how it comes over. Just checking something, because there's a film which sort of reminded me an awful lot. I'm just trying to remind myself of the name. Do, 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 do. I'm going to have to watch this chapter. I'm looking for the Section 3 section. If I remember right, it was on Section 3. Chance of Jimmy Blacksmith. I'm going to have to watch that again. Maybe it's on. I'll probably be able to find it quicker on the bloody shelf. There we are. No, what? Never mind. Isn't that annoying when you just can't quite remember the name of the bloody film? The devil something. But it was basically it was kind of like these sort of monk-like type creatures, like in kind of the Mexican border sort of area, and it was like kind of there was a sort of death cult which would happen. It's sort of semi based on a real thing. And it was super low budget. It's like one of those films that they kind of went. If it spent $10,000 on it, it was that would have been a huge surprise. Maybe with local actors and all that kind of stuff. And it just the use of the landscape and stuff like that would have happened around it. Enter the Devil. I think you might be right with that. Yeah. Yeah, I think you might be right. I must have moved it because it's not immediately jumping out at me. But yeah. I particularly remember when I edited it, I kind of like... there's a bit where this monk type thing sort of jumps off of a rock to attack somebody. And he looks like a Jawa, so I kind of added an TV kind of thing to it. It was a bit silly. Surprisingly good film, though. Has anyone tried Tubi? No, I haven't. Anyone expecting Nick Cave to break into song when you hear the bell? Fat White Cop is William Hootkins, who was the Peeping Tommy in Hardware. Ah, okay. Also Red Six in Star Wars. Black Police Chief was the chief baddie in Serpent and the Rainbow. Yeah, I've seen him in a few bits and pieces. Kind of a fairly common character actor. Has this turned into a Serengeti Western? Yes. I mean, there is that kind of vibe to it, though, isn't there? It is that sort of Western vibe, but also kind of mixed in with this sort of almost supernatural kind of comic book kind of thing. God, these things. I forgot how grim this this film can be sometimes. It goes places. Jesus Christ. The thing is, it doesn't make a big deal about that kind of stuff, and that is one of the things about this film. The horrific stuff is pretty damn horrific, but it doesn't dwell on it. But it's there long enough to really kind of just sort of get under your skin. Started doing a list of my DVDs 30 years ago, still doing the list now. Nightmare. If with mine, it's a big job, and I don't exactly have the biggest collection. I suspect Simon's collection is quite astonishing. I've seen little bits of it on his videos and stuff like that, but I imagine seeing it in real life would be quite something. Right, time for a new beer. Right back. And back. Did you miss me? Yeah, 820 odd now. I need a bigger place before I can really kind of expand even more. If I ever moved back to my brother's, between the two of us, our collections would be quite huge. I think mine's a little bit more specialist than his is. Didn't Scorsese have a collection of about 20,000 or something crazy like that? Quite possible. And what I've got in here is only part of it, so it's all that stuff down there and all the stuff which goes on top there. So there's two shelves up there with stuff stacked on the top, two shelves on there with stuff stacked on the top. Huge stack of shit there, and top shelf of that bit. Plus, a couple of boxes and a few bags out of the way. Which is mostly, but not entirely, mostly just kind of more mainstream stuff that I'm not so worried about. Yeah, I'm kind of the same, Simon. I know you've got lots of box sets and stuff, don't you? Which I love the box sets and stuff, but they take up so much room. The biggest box set I've got is the Monkey TV series. That's That's a big box. But I like having my films. I like my collection. I'd have 3 times as much, 4 times as much if I could. I think it'll take a few years, but if physical media does go away, there'll be a point where um, people will start to kind of appreciate what it was that they've lost. Which, I think eventually it will end up being like LPs and stuff like that. It'll make a resurgence one way or another. A bunch of IKEA shows, and I'm already beginning to run out of space. Yeah, it's the pain of the physical media collector. You can understand why a lot of people just don't want to do that. I think for all the disruption it may cause to some extent, there's something nice about having that. It's like collecting books. It's not quite the same having a book on Kindle. The soundtrack to this film was particularly interesting as well. See, when I first kind of approached this film, I thought it was going to be kind of like a South African Hitcher type film. To some extent, there is a element to that. Apologies, I keep hitting the table. There is a aspect to that, but it's a much more supernatural thing. Robin's doubling up on films as they're released on different media: VHS, DVD, Blu, 4K. I have no real desire to bump up to 4K. The screens I watch them, what the film's on, are, I've got some nice monitors, but they're not 4K. So I wouldn't get any benefit from it. And unless I get a screen which is like 42 inches. There's not much point for me. I'm never going to have a 42-inch screen. Not unless I retire and kind of suddenly decide to do that. As a collector, I love having my films in order of direct. It's out of personal respect more than anything. It's like looking at an artist working in a library. Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm very non-anal about that kind of stuff generally. I will occasionally sort of put stuff together by director, particularly if it's like the George Romero's Dead series and that kind of stuff. But most of that's over there now. I've got Knight Riders over here. I'd love to do a watch along of Knight Riders at some point. It's such a beautiful film. And so's this. I mean, it has moments of ugliness, but my God, the attention to detail, the mise en scene that's created in some of these moments. But it almost feels like it's like a heat stroke generated delusion, isn't it? And the killer in it is this almost supernatural kind of like personification of the death that's inherent in this landscape. rented Knight Riders from Mediatek recently. Still haven't got around to it though. It's a fantastic character-based film, and it's a very typical kind of typical. I say typical, not to diminish it, but it's one of those that George Romero's social commentary really kind of comes through, with his sort of penchant for the taking the microcosm to represent a wider story. But it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful film, and wonderfully acted, and wonderfully written. Such a simple story. Adam has been at me to do one. What's that? Been thinking of doing a video on my collection of posters too. Wasn't sure if anybody'd be interested. I'm currently sort of rethinking certain aspects of what I do on YouTube. I'm trying to think of ways that I can actually be more creative than I am. Doing the longer form reviews it's just getting harder and harder to do at the moment. I keep trying to, and I keep getting a long way into it, and then it's just like, things get in the way. So I've got to think of some stuff to do that will kind of fit into what time that I have. Movie collection video. That would be intensely boring with the size of this collection. That's the problem. It would be way too long to. Not that I have a problem with doing it, but it wouldn't be very interesting when, I'd have to be more selective and kind of pick stuff up and figure, kind of group stuff, if you like. I've done a certain amount of that. But that's a bit more like, that's a bit more 2009 than 2023. Suppose I could do it parts by letter. Honestly, if you want to do it, I would say take sections of it, and certain types of horror film, maybe, or by director or stuff like that. Tease would be a pain. You do my voice is horrible. Nah, you shouldn't be so bad to down on yourself. When you're enthusiastic about anything, Brian, it can come across as being something of an addiction. Most people see my collection as for instance, and I don't consider it to be particularly huge. It's big compared to a lot of people, but it's not like insane levels of it's going to fill up 3 rooms. But even still, people still kind of look at that and go, "Wow, you got so many. Why do you want so many? I could never do that." writing a review of Martin at the moment. All the guys that work close with Romero, himself included, all hold Night Riders Martin in the highest regard. Martin is a great film. Just it's a weirdly comic book moment, isn't it? He's like kind of following the hand and steals the watch. Oh, you could literally sort of see some of these shots as being a frame in a comic book, couldn't you? Because the vibrancy of the colours, apart from anything else, and the choice of angles, has that sort of comic book kind of vibe to it. It's kind of an adult kind of comic book, you know, on a probably graphic novel kind of level. The Dust Devil. Oh my god, this little icon which is down here, which is really annoying the hell out of me. The devil in Dust Devil in this, Robert Burke was RoboCop in the third film. Oh really? Okay. You've not watched RoboCop 3? I watched it years ago. I did pick up the box set of RoboCop. I've been meaning to sit down and watch 2 and 3 again at some point. And I did pick up Nightmare on Elm Street box set as well, which is just sort of... Right up here. It's one of the ones... it's one of the ones that John keeps trying to convince me is better than it is. I got that, and it's like I've got about 3 discs in. Well, I've got to about the 3rd box set, and it's like it gets harder to watch as it goes along. And I've got to watch Extra 2 and 3 again at some point as well. Especially 3. 3 it's always been a slightly tricky one to get a decent copy of. Captain says, I've only seen RoboCop 1 and 2 and the remake. Yeah, I wasn't that impressed by the remake. I don't think it was as awful as some people said, but I wasn't that impressed by it either. RoboCop 3 is... it's messy, to say the least. It's a very nice US Blu-ray disc of Extra 3. It's really okay. RoboCop Tears, it's fan, not a huge fan. Good fight at the end. Yeah. Just wish they'd release Extra 2 to Blu-ray disc, yeah. Very troubled film though was Extra 2. I mean, Harry Bromley Davenport has always seemed a bit kind of like disappointed by the film, to say the least. And a lot of it was to do with, I think where they started and what they wanted to do was very different to what they ended up with. Remaking Salem's Lot. Not going to lose my shit about that. Extra 3 was okay. Yeah, I think 2 and 3 were not as good as the first one. When it comes to Harry Bromley Davenport's stuff, it's really, I mean, for me, my favourites are Extro, the first Extro, and Life Among the Cannibals. Because Life Among the Cannibals is a genuinely funny film. Very quirky. We got Juliet Landau in it, and it's like she's perfectly cast in that as the crazy girlfriend. Jan Michael was hell to work with, though. Yes, he was. This guy had plenty of his demons, shall we say. I mean, you see the state of him by the time before he died, he was not in good shape. Jan Michael Vincent was drunk the entire time through filming, as I recall. He was incapable of learning his lines, and yes, probably very, very drunk most of the time. Harry Bromley Davenport would have to recite the lines to him, and he would speak him back. Very much, like Bruce Willis was before he retired. This is a really awesome film. I forgot how good it is. It's been more than a few years since I watched it. Really great work. This, yeah. It really is. I mean, we've been kind of lucky, I may have said not so much with this one in terms of luck, but both these films have got some really kind of interesting cinematography going on. Lots of choices within the photography decisions and the direction. There is something about the desert, isn't there? He mentions the desert. He grew up in the desert. There is something about the desert, which wherever it happens to be, it's such a for something which is so barren and desolate. It's one of those locations that has the most kind of character that you can imagine, and it is just this spectre of death kind of thing. As depressing as that sounds, I do remember going, when we were in Dubai. My stepdad, my brother, my mum, and I headed out into the desert on the roads, and getting out of the car and wandering, taking a walk up one of the dunes. And as you go along, you pass these towns and villages, and they're being taken over by the dunes. All these houses are ruined with just sand going through the windows and all this kind of stuff. But it's one of those moments where you where you're walking up these dunes, and you don't appreciate how big they are from seeing them on a TV screen. You see them in real life, and you look up, and you look up, and you look up, and you look up, and it's like a mountain, and it's hot. We went in the cool season. You go walking up those things, and you can feel the sand burning you through your shoes. And it's one of those moments you walk and you walk and you walk, and you turn around, and the car looks like a little dot in the distance. It's like a little toy in the distance. You haven't gone that far, and you sort of suddenly realise how easy it is to die out there. You know, you get this sudden injection of your own mortality. It's kind of it's quite something. Much prefer dessert to desert. Don't get me wrong. I think if I could recommend, if it was easy to do, I would say to anyone, if you get the chance, visit the deserts. It's quite something, and it is one of those things. It makes you get certain people will argue that the world's perfectly designed for human beings, therefore it must be there must be a creator and this kind of stuff. And you, considering a lot of that stuff come from the desert, you sort of go, how do you come to that conclusion when you look, you spend any time in a desert, and it is so violently opposed to your existence. And it's quite incredible. There is something about that kind of desolation that's almost total void of anything that's will support life. You can breathe there. Try getting a drink. It's difficult. Everything's difficult. Food is difficult. Drink is difficult. The conditions are not conducive to you. And there is that atmosphere in this. And that's one of the things I think when I watch this film, that part of my experience kind of plays a part in how I watch this film. And I had a tiny, tiny little taster of it. I'd like to visit Spanish deserts, do some location scouting, bring spaghetti westerns back to the big screen. Yeah, it'd be interesting to do. You know what? I mean, I wouldn't even go necessarily like kind of old school spaghetti western, but have that kind of vibe in a more modern setting. My mate was on a training course, gardening. He used to call it the desert. My mate was on a training course, gardening. He used to call it the desert as they never got a drink. Okay, fair enough. There is something about these, because it's South Africa, obviously, in this case, but Australia has a very, very similar kind of countryside in places as well. When you look at like the kind of population sort of centres of these kind of places, like particularly like Australia, it's like you've got the east coast and a bit on the west coast and maybe a bit on the south coast, a little bit there. So much of Australia is just absolutely kind of like almost entirely deserted because it's desert. And you know you get kind of pockets of industry and populations around that kind of thing, but for the most part it's just not that inhabitable. It always kind of like has a similar vibe to this kind of landscape. Neo Spaghetti Western, that's a good shout, yeah. Oh, we forgot. There we go. Gotta have the skulls on. Call the Australian desert the bush. Billy Connolly thought it was a desert with this one bush growing out of it. Yes. I absolutely adore that Billy Connolly series where you rode round Australia on the motorbike. It's a shame we're not going to see stuff from Billy Connolly anymore. I mean, he's got his health problems. He's gotten quite a lot older. But my God, those travelogue videos that he did are just incredible. Fascinating to see what this guy from Glasgow, who basically, generally speaking, you wouldn't have thought would have had much opportunity to do all that sort of stuff, and he got around and saw the world. Actually, it's technically a Neo Spaghetti Western that exists called One Woman for Seven Bastards. So it's Richard Dickey Harrison, aka Ninja Supreme. Actually, I think the spaghetti western kind of thing, especially these days, potentially could be a very effective storytelling tool. God damn, look at that landscape. Holy fuck, that's a big cliff. Actually, yeah. So once again with a great score. It would be interesting to do an analysis of this film. I'm not sure if it's 100% sensical, but there is something about the film which kind of makes sense on a more kind of visceral level. No, not visceral really, kind of like on a more sort of gut level. You're Catholic and sometimes scared if his friends would dump you if you know. Well, shouldn't do. It's there's no reason why they would, why they should, and if they did, they weren't good friends. Richard Stanley's directing career effectively ended after Island of Dr. Moreau. Picked up two of the most awkward actors in Hollywood as his leads. Yes, it's an incredibly interesting story. There is a documentary on it. And it's quite fascinating to see how fucked up that whole affair was. I mean, it's desperately wanting to be a Western, isn't this? And the thing is, I mean, it's like, you immediately tie Westerns with being in a US thing. But, there's kind of tones and intonations and sensations that Westerns, these kind of things, the kind of how the landscape sort of works with the story. All those kind of things are, stuff that can translate to a lot of different types of environment, really. Different countries that have similar environments. I've got. Colour Out of Space was Richard Stanley, wasn't it, as well? Yeah. The vibe of a Western can be transcribed to just about any Western. Dog's Place in 1770. Yes, absolutely. Because, a lot of it is about this sort of self-preservation and kind of like, your personally instituted justice, dealing with a world where justice is something that you have to take in your own hands. Certainly like films like Once Upon a Time in America has that kind of thing going on. Which you're going to have to watch again because it is such a cool film. I never really thought I'd ever get into the kind of westerns and stuff like that, but they are genuinely interesting films. And actually, on so many levels are kind of like with the American ones, even the Italian kind of like westerns, really are sort of a interesting examination of the spirit of the US in some respect. With the spaghetti westerns, they were kind of decried in some respects because the cowboys weren't always the good guys, at least not unambiguously so. If they were the good guys, it was kind of incidental because they were taking out the really bad guys. You heard that Richard Stanley was Me Too'd. Yes, he was, yeah. I honestly don't know what came of it. I don't think anything sort of came of it, but obviously now he's got this thing hanging over him. Did he do it? Didn't he do it? I don't know if there was a court case. There was talk of it. Uh, no idea this is Richard Stanley film. Was it also based on a 2000 AD comic? It has that feel, doesn't it? It has that kind of post-apocalyptic kind of feel to it. 2000 AD back in the day was an amazing comic. I wish I appreciated it more back in the day. Color Out of Space would have been infinitely better had Nick Cage not been in it. Fortunately, most of the focus is on Teenage Kid and the Scientist guy. um, I didn't mind Nick Cage. Nick Cage. I know you hate Nick Cage and all that stuff, but occasionally he's quite right for a role, and I enjoyed him in that. I enjoyed him in Mandy. Depends which spaghetti westerns. Some were fun little movies with heavy comic book overtones, such as the official Sultana movies. 2000 AD is still going, yeah, as I understand. Um, Honestly, don't know where it's at though. But it was very. Um, what's the best way to describe it? Um, it had a sharp eye on certain types of politics. It was very intelligent, um, satirical sometimes, kind of storytelling. You look at the likes of Judge Dredd and stuff like that, and this sort of examination of this kind of authoritarian nightmare, dystopia that story's set in. And you kind of look at it, you get it's very kind of bleak outlook on life. It's very cynical almost, but in an interesting way, not just in a petty kind of way. One of your favourite artists, Brian Boland, lives in your town. Ah, okay. It's one of the 2000 AD is one of those magazines of comics that is a rare example of the comic book that the American comic book scene was very jealous of. It's that good, or at least it was. I don't know what it's like these days. It got dark. So there's almost a kind of spirit of the land sort of thing. But when you look at the landscape, which is very much a character within this movie, that this thing, this I'd like to say Hitcher, but that would give kind of very specific kind of point of view on what this film's about. But this murderous character is like the personification of death within this landscape. You don't know much of this 2000 AD malarkey. It's worth checking out a little bit of. The likes of Judge Dredd and Strontium Dog and various other characters, stories within that. Interesting. Interesting. Very adult, actually, as comics go. To the point now, if they weren't, what was it, weekly publications, you would have called them graphic novels. I mean, if you wanted serious kind of stories and stuff like that, it kind of blew a lot of the more famous stuff, the Marvels and the DCs, out the window in terms of storytelling and kind of like quality of content. No, Blue Ice, it's not. I guess sort of, with some of this, I wonder what Richard Stanley thinks of the likes of Ken Russell, whether he's particularly kind of acquainted with his stuff. There's moments in this film which do feel a little bit Ken Russell. And sometimes that's down to the kind of effects. Ken Russell's films had this very kind of stark, sort of, very stark contrast. And, this movie has moments of that, despite the potato vision that we're watching it in. But there's moments where it's partly an artifact of the optical work and all that kind of stuff within the movie. But you do get some of those moments which are just that vibe of that Ken Russell kind of thing, which always feels like and that's kind of an abstraction of madness almost. RoboCop ain't nothing but a Judge Dredd ripoff. There's something to be said for that to an extent. Certainly when you're talking about the dynamic of like OCP and stuff like that. But certainly there's some similarities. I wouldn't be surprised if it drew on that a little bit to some degree. Hello, Richard. So I guess sort of tying in with the whole kind of idea of the landscape, the world that they're in being as much a character of the film as anything. You also do get this sort of sense of this kind of indigenous sort of awareness of these things that are going on. Not as blazing here in Spain. So that's nice. I hope you're in a nice part of Spain. I don't know if it's a bad part of Spain. I assume there is. I mean, is it me, or is there very few films that have this kind of pacing as well? This is not a fast film, and I think even even when it kind of like oh my god, even when it's like gets violent, it's not, it doesn't really kind of ramp up in terms of pace. A few things happen, but it's almost like, you know, kind of like everything about this film just feels like a heat wave, you know, doesn't it? How it looks, how it feels. You can almost smell this movie. The heat is unbearable for me, and tomorrow I've got a wedding to attend. It's a French one, so naturally it's going to be as drawn out as possible. I just hope there's plenty of good Vino Rouge, fromage. It has a slow, ponderous pace, but still exciting. It's all about the atmosphere, isn't it? And that's the thing. It's very continuous, but it's like that whole kind of sensation of being in intense heat, you know, of a desert. It's a very like you say, it's a very ponderous kind of discomfort. It doesn't feel like it's ever going to end. He's not at all fruity, is he? Is this Hellraiser? He's got a bit of a Frank Cotton thing going on, hasn't he? 5 hour dinner, that's what's in store for me. Oh, right, it could be worse. Just make sure you got plenty of cold drinks, you'll be fine. Sounds delightful. See, this is a thing that Richard Stanley has with the lighting and things like that. He has this almost Dario Argento kind of thing, but it's a bit toned down. But he's big on the UV kind of feel. Very big on that. Right, don't fucking. I'm gonna bat you away. Then I'm gonna run. It's down. Fucking keep going for it. This film adds to the hot weather we're having. Yes, mentioned and talked about that earlier. It's just certain films that have that kind of um, that are enhanced by the environment that you're in. Yeah, I think the atmosphere is really good. Obviously, get a feel for the of the land, but there's something not quite right. I think it goes beyond it. It's just not quite right. There's something just intrinsic to this place that is just, you know, he's kind of like this sort of natural occurrence within this uncomfortable, desperately difficult to live in kind of place. There's something about the South African um, accent that just lends itself to fuck this, fuck yes, fuck you. It's like Final Destination. It has its moments like that. Except, I mean, Final Destination, a lot of people kind of like, really kind of like that film. I've always thought it's a very, very, very frivolous film. Especially as you sort of go away from, I don't know, however many sequels it was. But it's not, it's kind of vacuous. Where I don't think this film is. Calm it down, lads, and speak English. Lethal Weapon 2 accent, yeah, he's been decaffeinated. You see, the soundtrack as well does have a kind of like the vibe of a western, doesn't it? Barbecue time, yeah. Right back. Oh. Yeah, I'll go grab another one. I feel like Lethal Weapon 2 would have been more interesting if Riggs had indeed died. The next two movies weren't anywhere near as good. Yeah, they stretched it out a bit far, didn't they? Yeah, vultures and stuff like that. It's again, it's just the whole landscape is just seeped in death. I was just looking up, kind of where this is based in Namibia, so not South Africa per se. Um, Apparently, there's going to be a Lethal Weapon 5. Oh, God. I don't know if Mel Gibson's really been rehabilitated quite enough, has he? I don't know. Are we giving him his career back at this point, or is he still deserving of being cancelled? Because he was a dick for a while, to say the least. If they bring Joe Pesci back, I'll hang myself. He's good in other movies. But Leo is one annoying prick. Oh, he had his moments, but he's kind of supposed to be a bit annoying, isn't he? Be right back. Gibson's apologised for a lot of his shitty behaviour, to be fair. He kind of had to, didn't he, really? I don't know. I'm not saying he shouldn't be kind of able to come back, but hopefully he sorted himself out a little bit. I think Gibson's just honest, and Hollywood doesn't know. Yeah, went a bit beyond that. He was. He got quite nasty. It's just whether or not it was as much to do with, because I think he was having some, shall we say, dependency problems at the time, and it's one of those things. Was some of the stuff he said him being honest, or was it him just being mean? Because if it was him being honest, then it's a big part of who he is. If that's the case, and that's will be quite horrific. I think with this film, there's quite a bit of it being adventurous with various aspects of it, be it the soundscape or the how it's lit and how it's shot and all those kind of things. Sometimes it's not always going to work out, but it's not the first film for a long, by any means, to kind of use weird sounding stuff. Whales can be a little bit kind of obvious. That's the thing. Everybody knows what whales sound like. So, do you think that David Lynch is jealous of Stanley for making his look better than Dune? What with the amazing desert cinematography? I honestly don't know. I don't think David Lynch would necessarily be jealous of somebody else's work. I think if he was going to be anything, he would be like kind of curious of that. I mean, this definitely does have a little bit of a Lynchian vibe. I mean, there's aspects of this film that for a for the kind of film that most people would sort of perceive it as being, does have almost that kind of Lynchian art house kind of thing going on. I mean, Dune was it was a compromised film in its entirety. Had Lynch had all his own way, I mean, I think the film would had to have been about 4 hours long, minimum, to get anything like what Lynch would have needed to make that story work. And I think that's true of the remake of Dune as well. It's a very dense story. It's a big story. It's as epic as the landscapes it's set in. And funny enough, it's also, at the same time as it is epic, it's also a very familiar kind of story. When you look at something like Dune, the story that it's telling, it's not as alien as the world that it's set in. In fact, I mean, I've always looked at it as being kind of like a story of geopolitics. It's a very human story. And it's interesting in some respects when you kind of like look at a story like that in that kind of respect. You go, yeah, it's not outlandish. When you kind of look at the various players and stuff like this, you can apply it to some not too distant history. Very poor trigger discipline there. He had his finger on the trigger just slightly as he handed it to her. When I was a kid, my dad used to have three TVs on at the same time, watching a film on one, snooker and football on the other. I don't do. I'm not a billion miles different to that. I've got three screens here. I've got that one, this one, and that one. Right, and it's like I'll have a game on this one. I'll have YouTube on that one, and something else going on that one over there. The Gen Xers and I guess Gen Z, was it Gen Z now? Not all that different. Snooker starting back up in a few weeks. I don't know. Is it UK Snooker Championships? It's not till November. Maybe it's at World Championships. I don't know. That was in April. Not sure which one it is. See, it was kind of buildings like, or simpler buildings that I sort of saw in Saudi, Dubai. It's kind of how they looked, although, like I say, much simpler buildings, like 1 or 2 stories maximum, usually 1 story, just partially buried in sand. The dunes just move and take over villages. I wish back then that I'd had the opportunity and the drive to photograph that kind of stuff, because it would have been quite an incredible thing to photograph. Imagine people's disappointment when they went to see this expecting a good film at the cinema. What? Oh, you mean what they're watching at the moment? Do we get to see the gremlins? That'd be fun. I wish you had the drive to do anything meaningful with your life. You'll find something if you want to find it. Still very young. He's kind of a spooky character in many ways, isn't he? Just because of, he's not, doesn't look like a monster. Sometimes that's worse. What am I drinking tonight? Just got Old Speckled Hen at the moment. There we go. Did I just break a glass? No. Drinking out of the bottle, I'd have to be working to break these. He made it all this way in the film. He must be gutted. Well, he has just been gutted, hasn't he? She sounds very sure about that. See, that's the thing, isn't it? Again, you're talking about the kind of landscape and the weather, really. There's a storm coming. I think it's going to rain. In a place like that, rain is something that you can imagine would be such a relief. Oopsie doopsie. Oh, good headshot. Now that's a headshot that doesn't come up in too many lists, does it? Yeah, Terminator. There's a storm coming. It's a bit of a cliche line in some respects, isn't it? But it's a bit different on this because if there's a storm coming, it's going to rain. Like I say, you see in a desert, yeah, rain will be incredibly welcome. Yeah, headshot by. Yeah, definitely. One of the messier headshots. I mean, even with like Savini's famous one in Dawn of the Dead or with scanners, not a headshot specifically, but same effect. Something about that because the body falls over and it's just, and then kind of like the, it's gonna, body's doing all that kind of stuff. I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Fuck's sake, Richard. It has plenty of that kind of almost Mad Max kind of vibe to it as well, doesn't it? So Hobby is going to die horribly, pretty much. But it's like, I mean, the character, the killer in this, like I say, he's almost a force of nature, and it's like, she's taken on that persona, she's taken on that energy. And there you go. So she's become the Dust Devil. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? Is this kind of like it's not a person, it's a thing. It's a force. It goes beyond just this one person. That was entertaining. I liked that. That was really good. Um, hope a large truck doesn't come down that road. Oh no. Well, it's been a good one. Again, two really good films. And it's good to see Dust Devil again because it's been a while since I watched it. And we watched Ticks, which is a very entertaining film. Way more entertaining than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a little bit of a kind of low rent laugh, but actually pretty decent. Quite enjoyed that. Absolutely awesome. It is. It's a beautiful film, and I so want. I've seen it now. Now, kind of like I had a look since we were told it was on Blu-ray, but it's in the German one. So payday, I will probably treat myself to a decent quality copy of that, as I hope you would too if you enjoyed the film. Because yeah, it's hard enough to get hold of. Yes, you have to go for the German version, as long as it's got a. Is it English language? Let's have a look. Yeah, it's got English. So that's good. That's good. 3-disc special edition media book. So that should be fairly decent. Anyway, thought it was a bit dull personally. Yeah, it's slow. It's slow, but I think I've always said I don't really mind a quote-unquote boring film as long as it's boring for a reason. And, you know, it is a very kind of... it's one of those kind of films where I feel like the atmosphere sort of wraps you up like a very, very overly warm blanket. It's like being smothered by it. But yeah. John says it's absolutely awesome. I totally agree. I think it's really cool. No worries, just Franco next week. Haven't decided what we're doing next. For the next one anyway. But just as a heads up, there is Cruising, Martin, Ninth Configuration, Killing of America, Mondo Carne. Some people asked about Mondo films. Africa, Blood and Guts, or Africa Audio. Obviously, Night Sitter, which has just been put there. It made the Possession seem watchable. But there you go. Anyway, not everybody liked it, but some people did, and I think it's a very worthwhile film. But that said, we are getting late into the hour, so we will say, I think we're going to call it quits at that point. It's been two fairly substantial films, but I've enjoyed it, and I hope you've at least gotten something out of it, even if it's just killed a few hours amongst your friends. So for now, Monday Carne, says Richard. See, for some people, the Mondo films are really, really boring. But anyway, we'll call it an evening. I'm going to open my door, get some fresh air in there, because it is, it's just shitty hot in there. I need to get some fresh air in there. It'll be a bit cooler outside. And tomorrow night, I'm going to be scope out. I'm going to be looking at Saturn and maybe a bit of Jupiter at some point. So I've got a nice weekend lined up. I hope you have a lovely weekend as well. I shall bid you good night. Take care, and thanks for joining. And thanks for your patience at the beginning with all the technical issues, because it's going to make the playback on this a little bit shitty, but at least it happened before the movie started. Take care, folks. See you next time. Good night.